Okay, so now we've briefly had a look at what investing in property might involve. It's probably a good idea at this stage to pause briefly and ask ourselves, why on earth would we want to invest specifically in property anyway? Now, there are lots of reasons in both directions. For the purpose of this high-level overview, we're going to briefly look at just three aspects, more to give you food for thought than anything else. But the first good reason to invest in property is long-term security through proven historical capital growth. I've got a few facts here which of course you can check independently, but the story goes way back in 1066. There was a Frenchman, actually descended from the Vikings. We know him in our house as Billy the Bonker, but better known as William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy. Now, he successfully invaded our sceptred isle and became king, which happened to be one in the eye for his victim, Harold, but there we go. Now, being a thoroughly organised sort of chap with a strong desire to assert control and to raise taxes in a firm but fair manner, King William commissioned a survey of all the land in his kingdom, the location, ownership and value of every parcel of land therein. By the time this survey was completed in 1086, known as the Domesday Book, the total value of all the land in England was a massive £70,000. Now let's fast forward today, and it's difficult to get an exact comparative figure, but just to give us an idea and to put it into context, for the entire of the UK, the value of housing stock only, so we're not including undeveloped land or commercial properties, which may well have been included in the Domesday Book 70,000, but we're talking about £6.79 trillion. Just a few other figures to further put it into perspective. We're talking about today, in 2022, there's about 27 million dwellings in the UK, of which 23 million are in England. These 23 million are roughly 30% owned outright, 40% owner occupied with a mortgage, 18% are social housing and 12% are privately rented. Now, I'm not even going to attempt to work out what rate of growth the 70,000 to 6.79 trillion in less than 1,000 years represents, but obviously it's no small beer. And far more interesting from the perspective of a current investor, in the current era, reliable records of all house sales have actually been kept by the Land Registry in England and Wales since 1995. Prior to that, accurate information was kept by mortgage lenders and insurance companies, so these records were available for research, but paper records, they're not in any database at the moment. Further back in history, between 1910 and 1915, the Valuation Office undertook a survey very similar to the Domesday Book for the equivalent of HMRC in those days, and what they were doing was they were recording all land values for taxation purposes. And then previous to that, there's reliable house price information gleaned from the data in the censuses between 1871 and 1911. So overall, we have reliable data stretching back 150 years, and from this, the eggheads have got together, done their research, done their calculations, and they've come up with a figure for the year-on-year increase in capital value for the UK property market. Now, before we look at what that figure is, again, just to put it into context, I'm sure some of you might be familiar with these sort of figures. Your grandparents or somebody else of that generation in your family probably bought a house in the 50s or 60s, probably paid £3,000 to £4,000 for it. What is the current value of that now? I should think there's a fair number of these properties bought back in the 50s and 60s for 3 to 4k, now worth 300 to 500k or even more. So yes, there is reliable evidence of continuing growth in the UK housing market, dating back to about 1871. So on average, the academic experts tell us that house prices have increased in the UK by 7.9% for at least the past century.